All right, very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Lecture 7, Chromosomal and Molecular Basis of Inheritance. Just to give you an outline, you might have already watched the video where all these concepts have been explained in detail, but I'm going to recap the chromosomal basis of inheritance as well as molecular basis of inheritance. The key topics to be covered are the genetic experiment done by Morgan on Drosophila melanogaster fruit fly, sex-linked inheritance, genetic recombination and linkage, as well as chromosomal abnormalities. Further, for the molecular basis of inheritance, we'll talk about some classical experiments done by scientists like Griffith, Hershey, and Chase, Michelson, and Stahl. So in the last lecture, we talked about Gregor John Mendel, how he did elegant experiments on P, which led to some very interesting and important laws of segregation, independent assortment, and those became still pretty much fundamental for the scientists to follow. However, many scientists were still investigating that how real those rules are, how much it can be followed in other model system. And there are different type of model systems available. Like one is Drosophila melanogaster, what you see in the picture here, which is a fruit fly. And if you just recollect when you eat banana and leave the banana peel outside somewhere in your kitchen, you see those small flies over there. And these are the one which are fruit flies. So now there are many scientists who use this as a model system, which is Drosophila melanogaster, to investigate different type of genetics problem. For any type of model organism, reason why scientists choose that is essentially that there is some convenience of working on these organisms. Like in Mendel's case, he was doing breeding and he could follow the P very easily. And to several generations, he was able to cultivate various type of different traits in those pea plant. Likewise, in Drosophila, there are many different characteristics which occurs, just by the way of nature. And also with small changes, one could also introduce some changes in the Drosophila, which is easy to propagate, and the fruit fly, generates more of the fruit flies in a very short time, easy to grow, easy to cultivate. Therefore, the genetic experiment becomes very easy for different type of crossing in that manner. Many scientists, they like to work on this. One I would like to mention here in India is Dr. Pradeep Sinha from IIT Kanpur. He does a lot of Drosophila genetics. And what you see on the right-hand side is essentially these are the test tubes in which some of the nutrient like banana peels are kept, so that Drosophila can be kept inside it, they can grow. You maintain sufficient aeration, and there is some plug over there so that they cannot fly away from there. And these kind of things in the 4 degrees and different type of temperature condition, they're maintained. These are very good model system to work with. But imagine now we are talking about 19th century, when Thomas Hunt Morgan at Columbia University was reinvestigating what Mendel did, but also trying to understand some of these laws better. So he looked at this eye color, which is red eye in Drosophila, which is quite widely seen trait, also known as the wild type feature, and then use that to also find out whatever Mendel has reported. Is there also any specific association with any chromosome, like where these characters lie? So that was his further experiment, which he wanted to contribute that what Mendel has reported at some of the units or factors which are heritable, are they also located on any specific chromosome? I think it's a good idea in all of these genetics classes and experiments and crosses for you to be active. Do these things yourself in your notebook and pen. You will find it very easy to follow. If you don't do that, questions will look very tough to you. And if you would have done the crosses yourself, you'll find it really handy and easy to do. Now let's just look at here few notations, like which is slightly different than the what we have looked in the P plants. Now what we are looking at the female XX and male XY. These are the Drosophila which we are looking at for a cross. Now, whenever we are looking at a specific characteristic which is more prevalent in the population, that is known as the wild type feature. For example, red eye color is commonly seen, and that is known as the wild type feature. So whenever we use a wild type feature, we will put a plus notation. It means it is wild type. When you want to show a mutation or a variation, which is not seen commonly, that is denoted without plus sign. So this part you have to keep in mind for any of the experiment which we'll be talking, right? So wild type and mutant. Now in this case, since we are talking about red eye color, W plus wild type feature in the XX chromosome of female. In male XY chromosome, we have this mutant white eye color. Therefore, it is X small y, small w. So based on this, now if you do this experiment, which was like Mendel, what he did cross, in the P generation or parental generation, you see like female and male cross. In the filial first generation, you got all the offspring which are having red eyes. Something similar to what you saw in the purple versus the white flower, or tall versus dwarf plant. There is some dominant trait being seen in the first generation, right? So let's elaborate on this cross, and please do that. As I said, like right now, we cannot see all of you, like what you're doing, but we are really hoping that you are doing these things on your notebook. When we do in the class, we make sure that everybody does these crosses and they get really familiar and very easy to follow. So here we have to also start making these notations, like how the Y chromosome could be made, how X chromosome could be made. So in the female, you have two X chromosomes. In the male, you have X and Y chromosome. We are talking about same cross. Just try to start from here. When you have W plus for this red eye color trait, and this is missing in the wild type here. It is mutant now, white eye. So W, and this characteristic is only found in the X chromosome, not on the Y chromosome. Of course, this was proved later on, but right now in the cross, it is shown that on the X chromosome, this trait is there, and Y chromosome, this is missing. So now when you take the gametes from this male or the sperm, what you got is W here and Y chromosome. So W on the X chromosome and Y chromosome not having any trait. Whereas the gametes coming from the parental generation, the X from that is having W plus, right? So both of them will be same. So therefore, what you see like in the first generation, all of them turned out to be the red colored or the wild type features. Now, if you go to subsequent F2 generation, now you can take these gametes from the male, which is having X chromosome W plus, and Y chromosome is not having trait. Whereas in the female, you got now W plus, which is having the trait wild type, and the W chromosome, which is not having that trait, which is a mutant characteristic. Based on this, again, you did the Punnett-Choquette square, and now what you are finding is 3 of them are actually red, and 1 of them is white. So exactly same what Mendel reported, right? So now what is interesting here, that we are finding the same phenotype, 3:1, what Mendel had reported. So Morgan actually reproduced his experiment in a different model system in Drosophila. But what he additionally also observed, that there is something happening specific to the X and Y chromosome. For instance, the male turned out to be white. Whereas in the, one of the male turned out to be white, and one of the male turned out to be also having the red eye color. Whereas female, they both were having the red eye color. However, now if you look at more at the genotype level, you can see this one is the homozygous and this one is heterozygous. This also heterozygous. So in this way, what you can observe, that despite having the dominant trait or wild type trait, you can still observe the differences at the chromosomal level. That actually led him to hypothesize and conclude that there is some chromosome association with these heritable factors of Mendel. It means they are either present on X chromosome or Y chromosome, and one could try to follow their pattern based on these crosses. So this is very elegantly done, and based on those initial experiments, with our further advent and advances in the field of cell biology and in the various type of molecular biology experiments, now we know that there are many genes which are either on the X chromosome or Y chromosome. X chromosome is still harboring large number of genes, almost 11,000 or so genes. Therefore, many of the diseases are actually linked to the X-linked characteristic. What I showed you in the beginning, the hemophilia case of royal family, linked to the X chromosome, and that's where the queen was suspected in that case. Then if you look at the Y chromosome, only few characteristic genes are located in that, and few diseases, and especially some of the karyotype analysis or determining sex could be done with the Y chromosome. So these are the gist of why both of them and the genes linked to them are important. This slide is quite important, just telling you ahead of time. Even today, you will have some question from this slide, and I'm sure we'll ask you more questions as we go along. And very easy to follow slide as long as you do this thing yourself. What we are talking is the color blindness or hemophilia. Both of them are X-linked disorders, right? It means the gene which is causing this particular disease, which is having some mutation, is present on the X-linked chromosome. So the notations to follow here is small n, which is having the recessive allele or the mutation for the color blindness, whereas capital N is the dominant allele or having normal color vision. Whenever we will give you the questions which is linked to some of these information, we will provide you more detail like what is dominant, what is recessive, so that you have clarity and you don't have to worry about making these notations. Now just look at these three boxes. One is unaffected individual, the pink one is carrier, and the maybe orange colored one is the color blind individuals. So we can have three situations when we have the female, which is normal, and male is color blind. Female looks normal, but is actually a carrier, and male is normal. Female is a carrier and male is color blind, right? So multiple crosses can be done. So I'm just showing you here, although I'm showing result, but I request you to do this yourself. Now let's take this particular notation, which is XX and XY. So female versus male. On both the chromosome, there is a capital N. It means it is normal, right? Whereas on the male X chromosome, there is a small n, which means it is having the recessive allele, which is causing mutation for the color blindness. Therefore, since this particular trait is linked to X chromosome, so even if one X chromosome is having that problem, it is causing male to become colorblind. Whereas if it was in the female, if it is only one of them, female will still look normal, but it will be carrier, right? I hope that becomes clear to you. So we will not give you this kind of notation. We will tell you, okay, female is normal, male is colorblind. Now, what can be the possible progeny from that? But we can actually make some further changes. We can add some more information. For instance, like, we have the colorblind father. It is going to only transmit the characteristic to the daughters, which are going to be carrier, for example. And then we have, multiple type of situation we can create just from these results. All you have to do, you have to make sure that you do the crosses properly based on these information. Let us now take the second cross, which is something like this, right? Which is we have the carrier as a female and the male is normal. Again, it's very straightforward. You have to first write for female XX, male XY. If male is normal, you know that in the male X chromosome is going to govern the characteristic. So either to be small n or capital N. If it is the normal, it should be capital N. So you write like that. And for the female, it is carrier. So one is capital N, one is small n. Again, the gametes from the sperm, gametes from the eggs, you do the Punnett square. And now based on this, what you see, like, the male, among the two male, there's a 50% probability that, each of the male son will carry the this disorder or will become hemophilic or become colorblind. In female, there is 50% chance that female, the daughter will be carrier, but actually both of the daughters will appear normal. And therefore, 75% of the children will actually appear normal. Only 25% of children will be colorblind. So I hope you understood that many ways I can make this statement, and simple cross like this will have all of these answers, right? So please do that cross yourself. Let's take the third situation, which is third cross when we have the female as a carrier and we have male as a colorblind. So now if you do this cross, you are taking X, which is having a small n, and the Y for the male gametes, X capital N and X small n. Based on this, what you see, almost 50% of the children are going to be colorblind in this case, whereas 25% will be carrier, 25% will be normal. Again, many ways of making the statement. 50% chance each child will have disorder, like either a boy or girl will have the disorder. Daughters having the normal color vision will be carrier. So I hope you understood that it's very straightforward now to decode from these statements, and we can give you statements based on which you can also go back and tell us the parental genotypes. So this slide, as I said, is interesting because it's very simple manner will give you idea that how important it is to look at the genotype and this kind of traits. Now, when we talk about, now the chromosomal basis of inheritance, and we are looking at where these genes are linked. I hope you recall when we were talking about in the meiosis, the recombination event, like when the genes are getting, exchanged, right? Now it is possible that there are few genes which are on the same chromosome, they are close by. So even if the recombination happens, but these two genes, if they are nearby, very close by, they will actually be linked, and they will be crossing and having the same traits continued. So therefore, he was also trying to look at, are there genes which are linked very close? Are there genes which are getting recombined? And again, he was trying to use these information based on the Drosophila based experiments. So what you see here now, the slightly different notations, but for the same Drosophila, he is now looking at the wing colors and the body color and wing shape. So wing shape is normal, whereas the body color is gray body. So since it is the wild type which we are talking about, that becomes the B plus. Vestigial is the VG, stands for vestigial, whereas when we have VG plus, it means it is normal. If you look at this fly, which is having the black color and the very small wing, which is the vestigial wing, so that is only you are showing the BB and VG and not showing the plus sign, which means it is mutant behavior. And in the cross like this, in the dihybrid test cross, what you see in the first generation is looking like the same of the one of the parental generation, which is the gray body and normal wing, right? Now, just to clarify this type of notation, I think I would have already shown the board in the video. But if you want to make this kind of thing, like you can show B plus VG plus, then another line, and then B plus VG plus. It means these traits are on the chromosomes, how they are located, right? That will make it easy. In the book, it's slightly confusing because it shows the B, V, VG. You can put B, VG, and then a line and B, VG like that. So if you want to do this cross, as in the Mendel's case, we talked about test cross, when you can use the a double mutant, right? Or the recessive trait, which we have talked that can be used for the ensuring that what could be possible genotype. Same phenomenon, same thing he also tried and observed here, that now if I want to know the genotype and the gamete composition here, can I do the cross with the homozygous recessive, and then which is the VG, and now what kind of pattern one would observe? So he observed 4 type of flies. One was the wild type, which is gray normal, something like this. One is the black normal, which is the this one, which they started with. In fact, one of this one, sorry, the black vestigial. And then he also observed 2 more, like gray vestigial and black normal. These 2 were new phenomenon, new type of flies which were observed, which was not seen earlier. And that's where he said, he found that few flies were also having these traits, while the majority of them were like that. So based on these, he was able to observe that there are some traits which are also linked to each other. Some genes are very close by, and those could be understood when he's looking at in the chromosome behavior, which is not possible when you are just looking at the overall phenotype. So I'd like to now bring the more molecular information, how people have studied the chromosome and looking at the under microscope, what is being observed, that during the process of meiosis and various type of developmental stages, sometimes the chromosomal abnormalities happen. And these are actually, although does not happen very commonly and frequently, but still these phenomena being observed. And what you have here is some very simple terminologies, which is like the English terms. Deletion means something is being deleted. So if it is A, B, C, D, E, and one of the part of the chromosome is being deleted, of course, the gene which is present over there will be deleted as well. So you are going to have some abnormalities based on this. What the new chromosomal composition you have, A, B, C, E, F, G, H, not the D1, right? Inversion means something get inverted. And therefore, like in BCD, it became DCB. So now we got ADCBE as the inverted chromosome. Duplication, part of the chromosome get duplicated. So now you got ABC, BC twice. So some genes are going to overproduce. And in this case, being translocation, one segment moves from one place to other place, and then they get replaced to each other. So like ABCDE and MNOPQR, they are exchanged here. So that became MNOCDE and became ABPQR. This is known as reciprocal translocation, means both of them are exchanging that segment of the chromosome. Whereas there is also possibility of non-reciprocal translocation, means only one of them is going to exchange, but other will not exchange material. That is, less happens and not shown in the book as well, but that is also a possibility. Many times, at least somewhere you'd have observed this kind of baby, which is having some syndrome. And these are, some examples when one of the chromosome made more copies of it. For example, in the Down syndrome, 21st chromosome has 3 copies rather than 2 copies. and therefore that resulted into this baby which is not normal. Edwards syndrome comes from the trisomy, or the 3 copies of 18th chromosome. Turner syndrome is having absence of one or both copies of the X chromosome, and Patau syndrome is having 3 copies of trisomy of 13th chromosome. I'd like to just mention one of the interesting incidents here. Many of you would have enjoyed some wedding in the winter time, I'm sure. I don't know which group I saw the chat in Telegram was D2 or D4, but a lot of students were asking that they had to go for some wedding, and some some wanted some gap or some repeat quiz, like something like that. So just that reminded me that, of course, in India the wedding happens with lot of interesting ways, good food, and lot of pomp and show, and you must have enjoyed good time with music and dance, right? But in none of these weddings there is any concept of doing genetic test, right? So that does not happen in our society very commonly, or like in general you'd not see that prior to wedding boy and girl, they have to go for any genetic test. But it just happened that I visited a small country, Tunisia, few years ago, and of course prior to going there I had no idea about the country, and I thought it is not so developed country. But we had a joint project from India and Tunisia for which I had to go there. And in the meeting which I was conducting with the scientists who are all part of that project, one of the key persons, she was missing over there, and I was very feeling offended at why she is missing. I came from India for this meeting. And then what they told, the reason that she's going to get married next week, and today only she got the date for the genetic counselor to meet for the genetic testing, which is very important over there and sort of mandatory prior to wedding. I was so impressed that, okay, such a small country, but so much awareness they have that prior to wedding, it is a compulsory thing, must thing to have genetic testing and genetic counseling to be done. I think some of these things are worth learning as we go along, because, and all of you who are at early stages, I think should start thinking that, how to raise more awareness and implement these awareness, right? So a lot of these information, lot of these kind of issues could be actually, controlled just at the very early stages if we could know these problems. And there are a lot of genetic test also happens at the neonatal screening level when the child is actually in the early embryonic stage development. Many type of tests. In fact, there is almost 300 plus tests being done to find out what kind of abnormalities they may have. And these things are so important. Otherwise, the family has to live with these kind of burden, right? And then that becomes very emotionally challenging problem to continue or not to continue, and how to handle these kids. But these are things which is with the our current molecular biology knowledge, our current genetic understanding, many of these problems, like if a family is having color blindness traits, or the some of these chromosome associated characteristics, it's a good idea to do genetic testing and follow up a pattern, and you can avoid many of these things if you can know, like what kind of problems people have. For the classes, that if anybody is going to get ready to for marriage, please do consult Alok. He has a lot of understanding of molecular biology as well as some knowledge for these genetic traits and intermarriages. Let me just move on, Alok, and then we'll talk at the end again. So just continuing for some of the classical experiments on the molecular basis of inheritance. This was the classical experiment done by Griffith, where idea was he wanted to test whether the genetic traits could be transferred between different bacterial strains. For doing that, he took a bacteria known as the Streptococcus pneumonia, and he chose two different strains, S strain and R strain. S stands for the smooth strain because of the capsule layer which is present on this bacteria, and that makes it pathogenic, which can cause the pneumonia disorder. Other strain is R strain, or the rough strain, which is not having the capsule or the absence of capsule. This is non-pathogenic strain. So he took two different strain of the same bacteria, Streptococcus pneumonia, and then did this experiment where when he injected the S strain to mouse, S was a pathogenic strain, and mouse died. Whereas when he took the R strain, which is non-pathogenic, mouse remained healthy, which was actually expected. But when he took the heat-killed S cell, which is the pathogenic strain, he made non-pathogenic because of the heat killing, and that also resulted into mouse to remain healthy. But what turned out to be slightly astonishing for him, when he took the mixture of this and this, like heat-killed S cell and the living R cell, like both of them which were non-pathogenic, but when he mixed them together and kept them, and then after injection, mouse died. So based on the experiment, what he observed or what he could interpret, that probably from the heat-killed S strain, the DNA, which was supposed to be pathogenic in nature, it moved to the non-pathogenic strain, R cell, and made it also pathogenic, and therefore it could kill the mouse. So there is some change in the genotype and phenotype because of assimilation of the external DNA which was injected, and that he termed as a transformation or the transforming principle or factor. So that was a very classical experiment done by Griffith. Other classical experiment was to find out that is the protein or the DNA, what is genetic material of virus phage T2. And the scientists who did this nice experiment are Hershey and Chase. They labeled the protein and the DNA, protein having amino acid like methionine, which could be labeled with radioactive sulfur, and DNA having the backbone with the phosphate, so it could be labeled with the phosphorus. So based on these logic, they did radioactive labeling, and this is the experiment which you have already probably watched. But again, to recap, in the first batch, he used the radioactive sulfur or 35S to label the protein. In the second batch, he used radioactive phosphorus or 32P for the DNA labeling. He wanted to know when a bacteria is infected by the virus phage, what material comes in inside the bacteria, which is the genetic material. Is that the protein or is that the DNA? So since he has labeled now and he's going to observe in both the cases, in this case, when what he observed, like when the DNA was labeled, when he centrifuge, when you do centrifugation with the very high centrifugal force, then you can separate the higher mass and debris as the pellet, and the the lighter weight liquid will be in the supernatant. So from the pellet, he could observe the radioactivity, which was for the 32 phosphorus, which is coming from the DNA, and therefore he could conclude that what came inside from the phage inside the bacteria was the labeled DNA, and therefore DNA is a genetic material. So again, some of these are very nicely done experiment long back without much of the technology is being used, just by simply radioactive tracing. DNA replication was another important contribution. We have studied in the cell cycle regulation about G1 phase, S phase, G2 phase, M phase, and S phase was when the DNA replication happens. How DNA duplicates and make multiple copies. Different scientists provided different type of hypothesis. Could be dispersive theory, semi-conservative theory, or conservative theory. In the semi-conservative model, which became very successful, done by Michelson and Stahl, they did a classical experiment where they took the bacteria and they grew the bacteria in 15 nitrogen or the heavy isotope medium. And then they took, now you know like how to grow the bacteria. You can just simply take the loop, simple, and dip in a new tube. You can now transfer the bacteria to a new medium. So the new medium was having the 14N or the lighter isotope. Now he transferred this to the medium which is having the 14N or the lighter isotope. And because you are having the heavy or the light isotopes, if you do the density centrifugation, you can actually separate the layers, of the 15N and the 14N. So we'll just focus on this part of the experiment, which was done by Michelson and Stahl. What they observed that in the intermediate, they could see some band, and then subsequent in the next cycle, they could see like, intermediate followed by some, a top layer, which is the lighter layers is being seen. Based on these observations in the density centrifugation, what they observed, they came up with this model where if you have the parental cell, which is having the dark blue DNA double-stranded, after the first replication, one of the dark blue remains there in both the daughter DNA, whereas the new strand, which is the lighter blue, is being synthesized, right? So for now it became double-stranded, which makes sense, like, the one of the double-stranded provided the template, and the new strand is being synthesized around that. So that became the first replication hybrid. And that what was being observed here in the middle of that. Whereas in the subsequent cycle, what he could see, now the blue one is dark blue is here and the light blue is here. But again, the light blue being synthesized in both of these DNA. So now you got two DNA molecule, which is having the hybrid, and two DNA molecule, which is only having the light 14N nitrogen. So based on this, now he could observe something like this, which is having the hybrid as well as the light band pattern. So therefore, semi-conservative model became conclusive and became experimentally proven. And Michelson Stahl gets credit for showing the DNA replication, how it works. Just to summarize, I think, we have captured most of the important experiment done for the chromosomal basis of inheritance, molecular basis of inheritance. Very interesting and elegant experiment done here from Morgan to show the Mendel's experiment, but also providing the further information at the chromosomal level. We also discussed about some of the chromosomal abnormalities. As I emphasized, a lot of genetic testing could be done based on these knowledge. We could now detect many genetic abnormalities, which is pretty commonly done many places. And some of the key experiments which gave us to some very fundamental knowledge done by Griffith, Hershey, Chase, Michelson, and Stone. All of these comes from these two chapters of your book in the Campbell, which I'm sure you have started studying as of now. Now, given that we are closing today, this is my last lecture for the first module of MCB. And I did not get opportunity or time to actually talk to you what we do, and we did not try to bring a lot of details just because we work in this area of protein and proteomics. So I just thought to show you briefly, like, the kind of thing which we do. Of course, this is not going to be part of your exam or course. It's just to give you idea that how various faculty and scientists working at IIT Bombay, they are utilizing different technologies and do research. Right. I'm just showing you this clip actually coming for a couple of years ago, when almost a decade ago, in fact, after my postdoc at Harvard, when I was providing some training program at Cold Spring in New York. And this is such a beautiful place. You can imagine, like, if you have to do a course conduct training here, it can be so nice and refreshing. And a lot of scientists, they come over there for 2 weeks training program, which we used to go from Harvard to do the training. Now, why I'm showing this clip, some student has made these videos over there at that time. We show so many timers are there. And if you recall various type of biotechnology experiments which we're talking, they require series of steps, lot of staining, sometimes different type of labeling, different ways of high throughput analysis. So each step is very much time sensitive, and a lot of reagents are required. And somebody actually monitored that there were 5 timers actually kept just for doing that one experiment. And many times, biology experiments are also teamwork, where many people are going to work together. And if anybody makes mistake, that also becomes very costly. In this case, after a whole day of work, just one person missing one key step in an antibody could not develop the kind of images which we wanted to see from that experiment. So again, all these are part of the learning. But just when I came back to IIT Bombay and I started my proteomics research program, we have some of these are the key focus in our lab, which is essentially to work on some of the technology platform development or new type of test and assay development in proteomics area, which by now that we are looking at proteins in the high throughput manner. Like genomics for the DNA, we look at the proteins in the proteomics. The key clinical project which we work on is the infectious diseases on the malaria, and more recently on the COVID-19. Also, we work on different type of brain tumors, especially in the cancer area, but also some of the other cancer as well, and few model organisms from different collaborative projects. So I'll just give you a glimpse of it. Of course, I'll not go in great detail here, but there are different technologies which are used to study the proteins, like what we talked for the DNA tools for the genes. Many technologies are there for the studying the protein, which I did not bring into this context. It was not part of your Campbell book. But these technologies can actually separate the proteins in a very high throughput manner. You can study now thousands of protein on electrophoretic manner, the way you saw agarose gel. Likewise, we have SDS-based gel and 2D gels, where you can separate these proteins. Then you have mass spectrometer, where you can separate all these complex peptides and look at their M/Z mass to charge ratio. And then from databases, you can search what proteins are there. So different type of instruments are available at IIT Bombay, which we use for this kind of research. Also, you have already seen the microarrays. What we talked about DNA arrays, and what we work on is here the protein arrays. So thousands of human proteins are printed on the chip, which can be used to look for any type of biomarkers for different diseases. Once you know proteins of interest, you can also look at if a drug can inhibit a protein. And from the cell line study, which you saw in the live lab sessions, once you do those and you want to further take that lead forward for the pharmaceutical development, then you can use the surface plasmon resonance instrument and technology, which can be used for testing these biomolecular interactions. So more recently, we have established this proteomics national facility, which is quite equipped with various type of advanced mass spectrometer, which can really do the very cutting edge research for the orbitrap fusion, Q-executive, triple quad ALTIS mass spec. So some of these are very costly gadgets, but these are one of its kind present in India, which we are using for our own research and for many projects which we support from all over India. Additionally, to develop the clinical type of test to validate your markers for different diseases, you can also utilize mass spectrometer technologies to come up with which peptides which you'd like to screen for a testing. Like in the real-time PCR for the SARS-CoV-2, we are looking at a specific type of genes from the spike protein for investigation. Same way, mass spec could be used for some peptide-based screening. I'll just give you some glimpse of the work done. So like in malaria proteomics and COVID-19, in the infectious disease area. So we had many collaboration from all over India, different hospitals, different clinicians working from different endemic regions of India, especially from Kolkata, from Bikaner, from Goa, and of course in Maharashtra, many centers, where we collect these patient samples. These samples come to our lab, which is usually blood sample from the malaria. And these patients are either having the falciparum or vivax malaria. What we see now is much more prevalence of vivax rising as compared to falciparum, which was very prevalent a decade ago. But the current RDTs or rapid diagnostic tests, which are available, they're not so much available for the vivax malaria. And that's where the students and researchers from our team, they try to look for the new test or new markers which can be used for developing these tests. So in this case, almost 215 patients' blood was analyzed, and we could, after doing all the proteomic analysis from the mass spec, identify some candidates which can be used for as a novel candidate for taking forward as a clinical testing for the RDTs. Further, a malaria could also be developed as a severe case of malaria, not so commonly, but many times patients die from either cerebral malaria or the anemia case or the severe falciparum, other complications. All of these are governed with some sort of mechanism, but that was not known earlier. Only last year we published this in Nature Communications Biology, when we showed what are the important signals which are driving these type of phenomenon, and how a non-severe or mild form of malaria could trigger to these type of severe form of the disease. And so same set of clinicians who work on the infectious disease, when the COVID-19 happened, then we got discussion with them that should we investigate COVID-19, because the team is pretty much ready and we have all those reagents and tests and instruments available. And these are the clinicians like Dr. Shastri from Kasturba Hospital, she's head over there, and Dr. Om, he is the head in Jaslok Hospital, and many of their collaborators. They were all very eager to participate in these projects. So we decided to investigate COVID-19 at a different level, and wanted to come up with new test. But the same lab which you have seen, was converted almost like the biosafety level 2 lab, when everybody was in the PPE working and all kind of safety norms has to be followed. And based on this, when we looked at the nasopharyngeal swab sample, which is being used for the real-time PCR testing, which right now, the same sample, when we investigate with the proteomics workflow and the mass spec, our goal was to look at what are all protein present from the human, which is the respiratory specimen of human, as well as is there a viral infection, then what could be viral proteins present over there. After looking at entire data, which becomes very much data-driven field, then you have to do database searches against the SARS-CoV-2 database separately, human database separately, metaproteome, other infections separately. After all of those searches, then only you can come up with the reliable, confident peptide which can be seen in this data set. And based on those, we could find 11 stable peptides coming from the spike protein, nucleoprotein, and replicase polyprotein. And then we use a triple quadrupole mass spec to develop this test, which can be used to identify if a patient is having the COVID-19 infection, which is already being done with the real-time PCR. So it was not so new in some way, but additional type of test could be developed, which is what we could show. But what we are actually more keen, given the context of COVID, which is still remains valid, if anybody gets COVID and they're mild, which of those could develop the severe form? And especially if you imagine many of the the comorbid cases, people are having hypertension and diabetes. If they get COVID-19, they became more panic, right? Because they might be getting severe very fast. So given the hospital's limitation, ICU limitation, the major challenge was to whom to hospitalize, to whom to give preference for the COVID-19 treatment. And that's where I think this kind of test what we developed can be very important, where now we took almost 200 patient samples of the blood samples, which is for the COVID-19 negative, mild, and the severe form of the infection. We took the plasma samples, depleted the plasma for the abundant proteins. Each patient sample was identified for all the thousands of protein present in the plasma, and analyzed using different type of big data workflows, came up with few peptides which is showing the changes, and then we developed those tests. What looks like here is this is known as a selected reaction monitoring test from the mass spectrometers, where you can see some protein like angiotensinogen, apolipo-B protein, fibrogen gamma chain, serpin family protein. Some of these proteins are showing huge change from the mild and severe form, right? So now, if a patient is showing the higher changes happening, even if a patient is mild, but the level of these proteins are showing somewhat upward trend, it means they should be given preference for the hospitalization because they are high prone for going to and develop severity. Whereas even if the patient is having diabetes or hypertension, but just because their all other proteins are at the normal level, it means these patients are still mild and don't need to get preference for giving ICU. So I think that just makes the things very straightforward. We did patented this technology, and this has a lot of interest and got a lot of media attention as well. Just switching gear quickly, the other major project in the lab is about the brain tumors, where we work with Tata Memorial Hospital and ACTRAC in Mumbai, which is the largest hospital of cancer in India and Asia, in fact. Different type of brain tumor, very deadly and very challenging to work with. Meningiomas, gliomas, and medulloblastomas, different origin of these tumor. We get from these doctors and neurosurgeons, we get these patient sample, which is the tumor tissue or the blood sample, cerebrospinal fluid, and then use different type of proteomic technologies to see what is happening in these patients. Is that what changes are happening commonly from normal versus disease, and can that help us to provide some clues? So I'm just giving you, of course, some glimpse, not in great detail. When we look at one of the most prevalent brain tumor, meningioma, when you compare the control of which is the normal brain region versus meningioma grade 1 or normal cell meningioma grade 2, what you are looking at, the proteins in the red means highly changing in various patients. Green means they are having very low in the normal control. So a lot of proteins are showing a huge change. But what was very interesting, that within the grade 1 also, we could find the pattern that the grade 1 patients are making two subtypes. It means all the low grade patients are not same, and they should be given different type of treatment. Again, with the rapid advancement in the genomics and proteomics and these technologies, now we can dissect out these tumors, we can dissect out these complex problem and look at much more molecular level, what kind of evidence we can have for these. Other experiment which we did on using the proteome array, which contains almost 19,000 human protein, which is work done with Johns Hopkins collaboration, where now we look at different grade of patients. Only 4 protein in the grade 2, 3, and 4 could be seen commonly expressing from the low grade to high grade. Our idea was, if you take the blood sample of these patients, can you find some protein markers which could indicate at early stage itself that disease is going to progress for the gliomas or the brain tumors. So protein like sortin nexin 1, you can see from the control to grade 2, you have some detectable signal. And as the disease getting progressed to 3 and 4, the intensity became increased. Now what we were looking at is the image processing problems. A lot of this entire big data becomes like data normalization, classification efficiency, looking at the image pattern analysis. All that becomes the huge data set which you acquire the data, and a lot of work goes into data analysis part. And that's where we collaborate with many scientists from the computer science department, electrical engineering, and the chemical engineering department. Again, this protein IgG1 looks a good marker to increase, whereas some proteins are showing downward trend like IVA1 and PQBP1. We could also look at within the same brain tumor of the higher grade, some patients, they are less aggressive, some patient, the tumor is more aggressive, some patient die early, some patient die late. What type of proteins could indicate that a tumor is very aggressive? And finally, the outcome of this was to come up with a test for the NED9 protein, which shows that within the grade 4 of the glioblastoma patient, there is some protein which shows the changes as we can monitor. One could also look at the effect of the mutation in the patients, like associated dehydrogenase. If you have studied the metabolism lecture, you could know the importance of that. And we studied in this case of the glioma. Additionally, in the medulloblastoma, which is the pediatric brain tumor in the children, it is very unclear that what is the group 3 and group 4 tumor. They're very different. One is very aggressive, one is very less aggressive. But how to control the group 3 tumor? They look very similar in the gene expression level. If you look at DNA and the RNA level, they're very similar. Only at the protein level, we could see a lot of differences, which you can see day and night difference in the protein level. Now, this was the work done from my PhD students, but of course, one of the students, which I still recall name, Anurag, from computer science department, BTech, he was involved very actively in this project. And he came up with some good machine learning algorithms to came up with these markers from our data, which look pretty good classifiers to classify the group 3 and group 4 tumors. Now, based on this, we had a collaboration from the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard in US. They were also working on medulloblastoma. We took their data blinded without knowing that which patients are group 3, which patients are group 4. And he applied his machine learning algorithms to classify these. And what you can see, only one was misclassified. It was very impressive analysis where only one misclassified, and all the rest of the patient we could classify very accurately that which ones are the group 3 and which ones are group 4 based on the protein markers. Finally, from the basic understanding, we now know these are the key pathways which are important, and maybe some of these glutamate receptors could be tried to control that. So this is how you see like the interplay of the different team members is important for doing these kind of complex problem and research. While working on different type of brain problem, we realize the complexities of the brain, but it's still the dearth of the data, dearth of information. Even normal brain, we don't have too much information. So while working on the various control which we needed for the brain tumor research, we collaborated with many clinicians, many centers, and also some scientists from the Spain, where we finally worked on the different region and sub-region of the normal brain, which just published in the last month in Journal of Proteome Research as the cover page. And now we have developed the human brain proteome map, which is also having a brain prot database where one could go and look at various protein and which region and sub-region they are located and what kind of function they have. All this is going to be very important public contribution, and society can learn a lot from these. Some of you who are research oriented and had some more keen interest in technologies can follow some of our videos in the Proteomics IIT Bombay YouTube, where many of our workshop and a lot of training program and details are mentioned, which is freely available and accessible to all of you. All right, I'll just show you this clip and then maybe ready for some questions.
We are proud to announce the high-resolution mass spectrometry-based proteomics research and training facility set up at IIT Bombay. EBT-funded high-resolution mass spectrometry facility will cater to the increasing needs of the Indian research community. With the help of state-of-the-art proteomics instrumentations, the facility aims at offering services ranging from proteomic and metabolomic investigations of samples, understanding PTMs in complex samples, validating of target proteins and metabolites, and their relative and absolute quantitation. Community can also benefit from access to other platforms available at IIT Bombay, like microarray, multitop, and surface plasmon resonance, all under the same roof. We also intend to offer high-quality training and educational programs in proteomics. We strongly believe in transgenerational capacity to advance the proteomics knowledge for the benefits of global science and societal development.
Come join us to be a part of one of the largest proteomics facility in India to realize the dream of late President Dr. Kalam and make India a superpower in proteomics and big data science.
Let's move on quickly, and I'm going to give you some recap of what we have studied and some information regarding our upcoming midsem and some of these activities. So just to give you a recap, like what we have been doing so far in the course, well, essentially we have looked at the tour of the cell, introduction to biology. And in the process, I was talking to you about prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. We looked at, why this course is actually offered to all of you. And slowly as we are going along, probably you're getting convinced that some of these key concept and technology and this knowledge is going to be useful at some stage of your career. Hopefully at the end of the course, we will be able to convince you more that why BB101 was an important course for you. And this particular lecture, you would have studied about the tour of the cell and various type of cell organelle, which further we moved on and we built knowledge about how the cell division occurs in some of these organelle, and the interplay of different type of proteins like cyclin and cyclin-dependent kinases. They are important for the cell division and the cell cycle to operate. We also discussed briefly the context and comparison of mitosis and meiosis and why different organelles are playing important role over there. Further, we moved on to discuss about cell cycle and DNA tools. In DNA tools, I introduced you to recombinant DNA technology or gene cloning, which has immense application. And in the context of cell cycle and the various elegant experiment done for the various type of cloning of animals and the therapeutic cloning, we also looked at the very eye-opening story to say for all of you to recall that how much important it is for you to be ethical for your research and your technology which you're going to develop. So much sentiment society and people have. And therefore, this story of Wong Wishluk will probably remain with you and will prevent you to do any kind of misconduct and any plagiarism in future. Now we look at also the genomics and DNA tools, which is not to say it's really very much happening in front of all of us. Every day you hear now Omicron has come, and how you can know about these new variants and new mutation happening if you do not have these technologies. So imagine like what all were supposed to be basic sciences has become so much pertinent and become so much important in all the centers and all the clinics and path labs right now. PCR, real-time PCR, DNA sequencing, all of these are now currently being used everywhere in whole world. Next lecture was essentially on the metabolism, which I uploaded, and you have watched that lecture to appreciate how photosynthesis happens, how respiration happens. Also, we gave you the hands-on session about the bioinformatics to appreciate that, what all we are talking gene, protein, sequences, from where they come and what kind of thing you can do yourself. And I hope after this session, you were at least able to appreciate that all this is very logical and a lot of things can be done using open access software tools, which was shown in this particular session. And just to ease for you from this lecture or this session, we are not going to ask any further question as we go for the midsim. So neither bioinformatics nor metabolism, you will have any question from that point. But I do want you to appreciate both of these are very important topics for you to understand and appreciate for your own knowledge. Everything I don't want to impose you just for the exam purpose. Mendelian genetics was, of course, interesting last lecture where you would have appreciated how something so simple like, which you eat every day, the P or the C every day P, but those can be used for doing these elegant experiments, which has resulted into some very nice theory of inheritance. And then Mendel, despite not having any technology availability, was still able to foresee that there are some factors and units like genes, which is transmitting characteristics from one to next generation. Further, we have been discussing today about chromosomal and molecular basis of inheritance. And of course, some of these examples will definitely give you on the lighter side appreciation about these technologies that now you can actually understand them better. You can prevent them, in fact, if you can do the testing beforehand. So all of this will be your general knowledge, which will be helpful throughout. Finally, just to conclude here, like the MedSem plan, it's going to be MCQ based, at least for my part of the MCB module. MCB also have two modules. One is which I am finishing today. Other is going to be taught by Professor Shilaja Nair. She will be your new professor and instructor from the next class on Friday. From my lectures, 7 lectures, one lecture I have removed here just so that you can focus for your midsim from the remaining 6 lectures. Today's quiz is going to be based on the 7th lecture, which will be a recap of what we have studied. And one more announcement, we have to unfortunately schedule the tutorial tomorrow evening, which we usually don't want to do that, but other possibilities are only on the Christmas day, Christmas evening, which was probably not the best time for all of you. So we are doing tomorrow 7 to 8 p.m. and you will have a quiz 8 from that. If in case you have already done so well in 5 quizzes as of now and you want to miss out tomorrow's quiz, you don't have to be mandatorily attend that quiz, because if you've already done the best 5, you don't have to worry for the remaining 3 quizzes in that way. But if you have done all the 8 quizzes, we will take your best 5 quizzes for your 5 marks, which we have done so far. If you have missed out few quizzes, we will only take 5 quizzes for you. So this is the policy for the quizzes. 5 marks we have done so far. 20 marks will be your mid-sem, which will have MCQ questions. Do practice about various type of genetic crossing and different type of thing, which we will talk more logical. Experiments which we have shown, they are not going to be directly coming like, that you have to write this experiment, how it is being done. It is not going to be a descriptive exam. But I'm hoping that some of these experiments.
This is used in a lancet. Take 3 separate drops of blood on a glass slide.
Place a cotton ball on the finger to stop. Are going to be useful for you to appreciate some of those concepts, right? So we did show you many experiments from the looking at bacteria, gram staining, growing the cells for the cancer cell, doing the PCR and agarose electrophoresis, looking at DNA bands, blood grouping. All of these experiments were shown to make it appear that biology is not about just theoretical mugging around the terminologies and looking at just some facts, but those data comes from these experiments and how these experiments being done in the lab. I hope at least you have made some appreciation. Whenever you will come back to IIT Bombay campus, and if any of these actually interest you, we will be very happy to host you and show you these things directly from the lab. So that will be from our side. But from the course point of view, you may be given some context, which will be sometime linked to these experiments. But of course, questions will come directly from what we have taught in the theoretical part of the lecture with my handouts and with your Campbell book. So we will not ask you to do directly from these experiments, but that were essentially for your learning. Additionally, throughout, we did try to bring some examples to give you some idea that, okay, why we are talking about various these basic concepts, but where they could be applied. By now, you will appreciate that real-time PCR and next-generation sequencing has a lot of application even for looking at COVID-19. But prior to that, people have no idea like why we are talking about these type of technologies. So precision medicine, like which is really upcoming field, when we talk about complex disease like cancer, every individual has to be looked at in its totality, a very individual way, right? Look at their genome, look at their mutation, look at their protein expression, provide them personalized therapy. They will definitely perform better. They will definitely recover much better. And that was the case which we saw in the Lucas Wartman case. When he was given the personalized therapy with Sunjanib, he improved, his leukemia got remissed. We have also seen extreme examples like Angelina Jolie, who did genetic testing, and various concepts from normal to cancer cell, how to detect circulating cancer cell, and different clinician scientists in this. If you watch metabolism lecture, you will find Dr. Ali talking about the new technologies, how they do brain tumor surgery, which is so challenging. But for doing so, like they have to still look at the use of technologies to differentiate which region is tumorous region, which region could be non-tumorous region. And imagine that they are actually doing the live surgery of the patient, which is actually for the brain. Brain is kept open, patient is actually the live. They don't do the anesthetic surgery because they want to look at which region patient is responding and not responding. So all that is a good interplay of the knowledge coming from the clinicians and biologists and being applied with the engineering devices and tools. All of that is happening in reality. And coming to IIT Bombay, again, we have the Healthcare Consortium, where some of you who have interest in these areas can also get exposure to directly meet these clinicians and visit these hospitals, look at some of these problems which they face and what challenging questions they have for you. So all of this will open up some new interesting projects for you as you go in the future. All right, so that was the final take, that there should not be any boundary to the human endeavors, right? From this theory of everything from Stephen Hawking, which actually just reiterates that why we introduced this course. We do want to see like different individuals, they bring different specialities, and toward the same common problems, how best we could break these boundaries and bring some of the concept and thoughts and solutions, which could be bringing some new solutions for the society. Further, I think in this course, I try to emphasize that it's not only about doing your own work, but also a good team play is required, where you have to also be quite ethical and show integrity in your career, which you're going to pursue as an engineer. And finally, although we have not talked about evolution, but Darwinism prevails. Like BB11 is one of the examples. You may not have liked biology, but now since you are studying, and many of you are doing so well, so it is like natural selection is going to be prevailing. Like, those who are not going to adapt, they will be weeded out, and those who will be adapting it will be best survivors. I hope some of these, small concepts, small notes, some of these take homes will remain with you, and you will enjoy the rest of the BB11 course from the next instructors and the next modules. Post MedSem, you will have quantitative biology and also biomedical engineering, these kind of modules. All of that will give you a broader perspective about biology, which is a good interplay along with the technical knowledge coming from engineering field. That's all from my side. Thank you very much, everyone. And with this, let me stop sharing. If you have one or two quick question or comments, I can take it. Thank you very much, and all the best, everyone. Bye-bye.